A role player catches fire, 2 quick threes, a back cut, a pull-up, 11 points in about 12 minutes. The kind of burst that flips a timeout into a gut check. That was Chloe Bibby. Fresh legs, clean release, a pocket of offense when the Fever badly needed air. 3 nights later, silence. Same urgency, same need for spacing, but the warm-up never came off. DNP, no foul trouble, no stares from the refs, no sign that the earlier spark had somehow burned out. Just a choice. And choices like that tell you what a team believes about itself under pressure. Because this isn't only about counting points, it's about the shape of those points. Corner gravity that pulls a help defender one step too far, a catch and shoot that punishes the nail, a stretch forward who changes the geometry without calling her own number. When that tool stays in the bag, you're not just passing on a player, you're passing on a look. Maybe the staff wanted size on switches. Maybe they trusted veteran timing more than fresh hands. Coaches live on those trade-offs. But when a one-possession game tilts late, the decision not to test the hot hand feels less like caution and more like a door you refuse to open. But that wasn't the whole story. Everything tightened in the fourth. Possessions shrank, the rim felt smaller, one rookie for Washington buried a cold-blooded 3, another ripped down rebounds like it was a personal dare. Indiana had looks, but not the oxygen. The game slipped by inches. One loose ball, one late closeout, one short free throw, and suddenly the margin felt like a wall. Without their lead creator, the Fever had to manufacture answers. That means clean spacing, decisive cuts, and someone who makes a defender pay for helping one step too far. Instead, the half-court turned sticky. Washington's young legs kept winning 50-50s, stacking extra chances while Indiana traded tough 2s for even tougher 2s. You could see the shift with the naked eye. Their rookies played free. Our offense pressed. That's why the DNP stung. When the opponent's youngsters are stealing the script with energy and shot making, a spark off your bench isn't a luxury, it's the counterpunch. A quick trigger shooter changes geometry, even if she doesn't touch the ball. Corners become dangerous. Drives open. Rotations hesitate. Those are the tiny edges that swing a tight game. And here's the part that lingers. Indiana didn't need 30 minutes of heroics. 5 to 8 testing minutes might have been enough to force Washington to guard different space, to break up the rhythm of those late possessions, to give Aaliyah Boston one clean post touch without a second defender camping at her elbow. In a 1 or 2 possession game, that's the difference between we almost had it and we took it. And that's the moment the rotation debate ignited. Because if the other side's youth won the night, why didn't ours even get a chance? She's not a volume star, she's a specialist with teeth. An Australian forward who learned to survive on timing, spacing, and shot readiness. Think catch and shoot corners, quick pick and pop releases, and the little off-ball cuts that punish a defense the moment it blinks. She doesn't need 10 dribbles to matter. Give her half a window and she tilts your help map. Her game travels because it's simple and ruthless. Feet set, hands prepared, fire on the catch, close too hard, and she'll slip behind you for a layup. Stay home, and the low man has to think twice about tagging Aaliyah Boston. That's the value. She changes the geometry without demanding touches. It's oxygen for primary scorers like Kelsey Mitchell. Lanes clear, reads get cleaner, the floor just feels bigger. There's grit behind it too. She sprints to the deep corner, runs the lane wide, and hunts second chances with inside shoulder leverage. On defense, she's not a switch-everything eraser, but she competes, boxes out, and stays attached enough to buy time for the backline. Coaches trust players who do their job without turning the play into a drama. That's why her mini eruption mattered. It wasn't a heat check outlier from a ball-dominant guard. It was a proof of concept from a role that scales. If the shot falls and the floor expands, everyone eats, and in tight games without your lead creator, those scale pieces are often the difference between grinding and flowing. So why shelve a look that works? To find that answer, you have to zoom out from the stat line and into philosophy. How a coach balances matchups, trust, and the late game map. This is where basketball turns into belief. Do you ride the spark, or do you trust the map you drew all week? Coaches live in that tension. One path bets on rhythm and feel. The other bets on reps and reliability. You could see the logic for sticking with veterans. Late games are a choreography. Who calls the switch at the nail? Who tags on the roll? Who knows the ATO counters without a glance? Familiar groups simplify the noise. You trade a little shooting juice for cleaner coverage and predictable communication. When the clock compresses, predictability feels safe. But there's logic the other way too. Momentum is a resource. A hot shooter changes how 5 defenders stand even before the ball arrives. Corners widen, closeouts lengthen. bigs hesitate to overhelp. If the plan is strangling your spacing, a green light bench piece is the scalpel that opens airflow. The Fever chose stability. They leaned on the names that have earned trust, the bodies they've drilled 100 times in shell. That's defensible until the math at the rim turns ugly and the scoreboard refuses to blink. Then safe starts to look like stuck. Coaches will tell you there are matchups fans never see. Who can survive a switch onto a twitchy guard? Who won't bite on a hammer action? Who hears the flare call a beat early? Fair, but the public only sees the result. A 1 or 2 possession game without a test drive for the one look that recently worked. And that's where the fuse burned down. Because even if the chalkboard made sense in the locker room, the eye test on the night said, try something that stretches the defense. When that never came, the conversation moved out of X's and O's and into heat. Fans weren't buying the chessboard explanation. Open any thread and the tone hits you, agitated, impatient. People aren't just mad at a loss, they're mad at a choice. The DNP became shorthand for a bigger fear. That production isn't being rewarded, that the rotation is a closed circle when the game begs for a spark. Creators poured gasoline on it. Clips, breakdowns, thumbnails in all caps. Some floated the idea that ownership is tired of conservatism and wants punchier decisions. That's content doing what content does, filling silence with story. None of it is a team memo. It's mood, not mandate. Still, mood matters. When fans hammer the same pain point hot hand sat while the other side's rookies cooked, that chorus echoes into every press avail, every radio hit, every pregame segment. Narratives harden. A single DNP turns into a referendum on philosophy. Whispers follow. People start reading body language on the bench, timing substitutions like crime scene analysts, parsing every post-game quote for tells. It's human. When answers feel thin, speculation rushes in. Here's the line we won't cross. Rumor isn't proof, it's noise with a heartbeat. Useful for taking the temperature, useless for a verdict. The basketball has to carry the argument. Speculation aside, the court still leaves clues and the numbers tell a clearer story about what actually swung that game. Strip the drama and look at the bones. The game hinged on tiny margins, one extra rebound here, one clean corner look there, one loose ball that bounced the wrong way. Washington's kids cashed the high leverage moments, timely threes, putbacks that punish a single missed box out, while Indiana's half-court tightened into tougher and tougher attempts. You could feel the math shift. Second chance chances crept up for the Mystics. Free throws didn't bail the Fever out. Turnovers weren't outrageous, just unhelpful. The kind that arrive exactly when a run is brewing. And when the clock got loud, the shot diet slanted toward contested twos instead of rhythm threes. This is where a spacer matters. One reliable shooter in the weak side corner drags a helper a foot wider. A foot is everything. The drive angle changes, the post catch is cleaner, the kick out becomes a shot instead of a scramble. That's the incremental edge Bibby had flashed earlier in the week. Quick trigger, no drama points that reshape the geometry without hijacking the offense. The counter argument is real. If you don't trust the coverage on the other end, you buy defense and live with the squeeze. But in a 2-possession game, living with the squeeze turns into dying by it. The box score won't shout it, yet it whispers the same thing over and over. Indiana needed one more honest spacer to make Washington choose between the paint and the arc. Yet the timeline tossed another curveball. Just when the debate hit a boil, reality tapped the brakes. Word surfaced that Bibby was dealing with a knee issue, exactly the kind of detail that turns hot takes into question marks. If the staff had a hint she wasn't right, the DNP stops looking like stubbornness and starts sounding like caution. Sometimes the hardest coaching call is protecting a player from herself when the adrenaline says, I'm good. Injuries scramble the clean lines of argument. A rotation that looks conservative from the seats can be compassion in disguise from 10 feet away. If you're weighing 5 speculative minutes against a flare-up that lingers for weeks, you shelf the test run and live with the grumbles. That's not cowardice, that's stewardship. It also reframes the week. The 11-12 wasn't a promise, it was a snapshot. If the knee pings after that, you're no longer deciding between ride the hot hand and trust the vets. You're deciding between win tonight and have options next week. For a team clawing at playoff ground, availability is an asset. You don't spend it recklessly. Of course, that doesn't erase the sting. Fans saw a winnable game and a shooter who never touched the floor. They're not wrong to want answers, but the truth lives in the gray. Performance, matchups, health, trust, all tugging on the same rope. Sometimes the rope frays in silence, and the only public evidence is a warm-up top that never comes off. So where does that leave the Fever? Somewhere smarter, if they choose it. If Bibby's knee settles, you build a small intentional window for a green light spacer and you measure it ruthlessly. If it doesn't, you identify the next quick trigger wing and rehearse the same roll. Either way, the lesson survives the plot twist. Reward immediate impact without gambling the future. So what does it all add up to, and how did the Fever turn a flashpoint into a framework for the stretch run? Strip away the noise and you're left with identity. Are the Fever a team that clings to comfort, or a team that rewards impact in real time? Games like the Mystics Lost Force that answer into the open. You can't hide from tight finishes. They show who you trust, what you value, and how quickly you're willing to pivot when the plan jams. The path forward doesn't require a teardown, it requires rules. Give yourself oxygen minutes each half, 2 short windows dedicated to a green light spacer. If the first shot falls, keep the group for a second action. If it doesn't, no harm, you've measured it. That micro bet creates accountability on both sides. The coach proves she'll reward production, and the shooter knows the leash is real but short. Pair that with clarity around roles. When Clark sits, spacing isn't a luxury, it's the engine. Boston needs early touches with the floor honest, and Mitchell's drives deserve a corner that punishes help. If Bibby's healthy, let her be that threat. If the knee nags, script the same job for the next wing who'll sprint to the corner and shoot without blinking. Philosophy survives personnel changes when the job is defined. Endgame, simplify. One late set with a built-in spacer, read post entry if the tag stays home, kick if the low man cheats, run it twice with different screens, and force the defense to reveal what it's willing to give. You're not hoping for heroics. You're creating a choice the opponent can't guard both ways. Culturally, the message has to be unmistakable. Minutes are earned by what happens now. Veterans still matter. They carry the system. But the door has to be cracked for the spark that tilts a 2-possession game. When players believe that door exists, effort compounds. Practice snaps sharper. Bench units play like they're one make away from changing the night. And if the knee limits Bibby this week, don't let the lesson vanish with the headlines. Keep the oxygen minutes. Keep the green light rule. Keep the willingness to test a look before the final media timeout. Consistency turns a flashpoint into a framework, something you can ride into seeding battles without guessing who you are. In the end, the Mystics game won't be remembered for a single box score line. It'll matter if it marks a pivot. Playoff pushes are built on tiny edges and brave tweaks. Reward the impact you can see, protect the legs you'll need tomorrow. And when a shooter lights a match, don't pocket the flame, use it to see the win that's already in the room.